And I thank you enormously for talking to ACAP. It was very enlightening, and filling us in. And you have information that is very important to not only what the United States of America, but the world, but the people of the United States are contemplating on this very date, having to do with the South Asia and so forth. And in the audience, welcome very much to Conversations. A great honor to welcome to the program Major General Anis Ahmed Bajwa. And he's retired from the Pakistan Army. A major general would be a two-star general. That's very high in the ranking system. He's also here on the title page, he's been with the United Nations Department of Peacekeeping Operations. He's retired from that now. And he has a number of other hats that he has worn. I'm going to maybe just go through them quickly here, and they'll come up during the lower thirds of the program, because he's had a wide variety of experience, really important experience with the UN and other that's very apropos of the time. He is the ex-chief of staff to the President of Pakistan, a major responsibility. He was also ex-vice chief of the General Staff of the Pakistan Army, very, very relevant. He was also ex-deputy special representative of the Secretary General of the UN for East Timor. Again, very, very important development that occurred more recently there. He's also the ex-UN chief military observer in Georgia, and that's Georgia in the south in the Caucasus, not in the United States. But he's also ex-chief of staff on the UN mission in Somalia, and one last ex-director of change management, director of policy evaluation and training. I presume that's for the United Nations Peacekeeping?
That's right.
So the resume is very, very impressive, and General, welcome very, very much to Conversations. I wonder if you could, we're going to have a lot to talk about, and it's very timely, but could you share your own background, please? Born and raised, a little bit educated, and we'll talk about the military experience in Pakistan, but could you share your own background, and then we'll get into discussing events of the day and also events that particularly in South Asia, but your own background, please.
Before I give you that, Harold, first of all, let me thank you for having me on this program that you call Conversation with You. It's a pleasure and a privilege to be talking to you today, and I hope it'll result in the people of New York knowing more about Pakistan and knowing more about the region that I come from.
Also, it's going to be put up on YouTube, and it's going to be streamed to the world, so there may be people beyond New York that it could benefit as well. I just mentioned that.
Yeah. Wonderful, wonderful. Yeah, about myself, I'm 62 years of age. I was born in February 1947 in a place called Narawal in Pakistan. I have had all my education in Pakistan. I have a bachelor's degree in economics from the University of the Punjab, and I have a master's degree in war studies from Quaid-e-Azam University in Islamabad.
Is that comparable to the War College here in the
No,
American
War College is separate.
Okay, see, okay.
This is civilian education.
I see, okay, right.
But the second degree that I spoke of is, I was in the Army already when I got my master's.
I see.
I hadn't done it before joining the Army, because we joined the Army at a young age, which I did at 18 years of age. So, but you can get enhance your educational qualifications later also. So that's what I did. Yeah, you say War College. Yes, I've done that also. I'm a graduate of the National Defense College in Pakistan, which is equivalent of your War College. They have two types of courses, different types of courses, but two major courses that they run. One is called the Armed Forces War Course, and the other is called the National Defense Course. Okay. I'm a graduate of the Armed Forces War Course.
Okay.
I'm also a graduate of the Pakistan's Command and Staff College and the Iranian Command and Staff College. Iranian, yes, but that was just before the revolution.
That was before, okay.
So it's some time ago, long time ago actually.
It's very interesting, if I may. 47 was just about the time of the partitioning of the subcontinent of Africa into Pakistan and
the independence of the two countries.
And the independence of the two countries, major event in terms of population shift and so forth, particularly in that part of the region, if not in the world. So you were born right into a very volatile period of time.
Yes.
If I may, 47 was a
yes,
defining moment. Yeah.
It was. I mean, I think that whole decade was a defining decade. There was war, and then the war came to an end, and then decolonization started, and the Indian subcontinent was among the first few areas which were decolonized, and of course we had a partition based on what we in Pakistan like to call a two-nation theory, which was based a two-nation theory,
right?
Which emphasized on the religious aspect of the populations in the subcontinent at that time, and the theory went like this: that areas which were populated by majority Muslims should become a separate country, and that became Pakistan. And as you know, Pakistan was at that time, when it came into being, there was a West Pakistan and an East Pakistan. And in 1971, East Pakistan became Bangladesh after a war. Coming back to myself, so I was born in Pakistan, educated in Pakistan, joined the Pakistan Army. As I said, at age 18, I was commissioned into artillery in 1966, and then, of course, did a lot of various jobs in the Army in my professional career, and ultimately rose to be a Major General.
Major General is a very high office holder, a great responsibility. Chief of Staff to the President of the country was a major responsibility you had, and you had to do that War College to get to, that's a 2-star general, that's a very high order of rank.
Yes, without the War College you don't get to be a general officer.
Right, exactly.
You know, you don't become a 1-star general.
The same as here in the United States.
Yeah.
And there's some camaraderie between the military people of the world, as it were, in a sense. Doctors get together at conferences. Military people at a general staff, a general level of the military forces around the world, are they in touch with one another and form a kind of community? Do you ever have an association of the world general officers of the world or anything like that?
Fortunately not.
Okay, maybe fortunately so, right?
We don't have that kind of...
Okay.
Yeah, we don't have that kind of a thing, but of course there is camaraderie among the military whenever and wherever they come together. It's easy for them to communicate with one another. I mean, it's you know, a common lingo, I would say, and common vocabulary that military share all over the world, all around the world. So whenever they get together, they find it easy to start communicating.
The language would be similar to one another. They would understand it.
Yeah, that's why I said similar vocabulary. They understand. Otherwise, you know, every profession has its own jargon and sort of special vocabulary. And when it is people who don't belong to that profession, then you do find that sometimes it's difficult for them to communicate and to explain to the other as to what they are trying to convey.
Yes, exactly.
But within the military, it's easy. Anyhow, so in 1993, when I was a brigadier general, 1-star general, that was the first time I sort of came across UN peacekeeping, in the sense that was the time I was asked by my government to go to Somalia, where they wanted a chief of staff at a 1-star general's rank. The mission was commanded by a 3-star general who was Turkish, and his deputy was a 2-star general, Tom Montgomery, an American 2-star general, later became 3-star, and a 1-star chief of staff. That was me. And that was 1993. The sort of mission that I would not say that was a failure, but the mission that went through a lot of troubled time and difficulties.
Absolutely.
And ultimately, the troops had to withdraw then from
Black
there.
Hawk Down time?
Yes, Black Hawk Down time. That's the time.
Right,
yes.
right. You were there?
I was there for 13 months. I
wow,
was there.
right.
Yeah, 1993 June to July 1994.
It must be a very tempering experience.
Yes, yes, indeed.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the first time I worked for the UN.
For the UN on leave from the military?
No, not on leave.
Not on leave.
No. I was in uniform.
You were in uniform.
Yes. Yeah, I was in uniform.
I'm trying to understand. You were part of the Pakistan Army. You were a one-star general in the Pakistan Army, and then you were working with the UN as in that capacity as a Pakistan general officer with a UN agency or a UN mandate. I don't quite understand that.
Okay, let me explain this.
Yes,
not with an agency, but UN as its primary mission and role is responsible for global peace and security.
Yes, indeed.
And wherever there is war and violence, UN is supposed to play a role, and therefore in many places the United Nations deploys a peacekeeping operation.
Now,
or
how
a
do they
peacekeeping
gather?
mission.
Does the UN have an ability to raise a military presence or not? The UN being a thing of sovereign nations, how does that work? Or what is the writ? How does the writ run in terms of military capability of the UN itself as an institution?
The UN, when the UN needs to deploy a peacekeeping operation somewhere, the UN requests its member states to provide troops for that.
Okay.
And member states, depending on their own interests and their own policy and their own laws, then are those who are willing to provide troops for that mission. Convey that, they communicate that to the United Nations, and the United Nations then agrees, and that country agrees, and the Security Council agrees, and when everybody agrees, then those troops from those member states of the United Nations are sent over there. Those troops and units and tanks and helicopters and everything.
I see.
And there is a headquarters there.
And that includes peacekeeping. Is that also include, like we did the Gulf War in Iraq with UN, and they had a lot of other countries.
Okay, that is peace. That is enforcement operation.
Okay, right.
That is not a peacekeeping operation.
Okay.
Yeah,
fine.
yeah. A peacekeeping operation.
Blue helmets. I think
it is blue helmets, and a peacekeeping operation basically aims at ensuring that violence comes to an end in that theater or in that country or in between two countries, and so that there is a ceasefire between the parties to the conflict, whether the parties to the conflict are internal or external. So that there's a ceasefire, and that the ceasefire can be watched, and that gradually a resolution can be found politically to the problem. That's what peacekeeping broadly does.
Is the Security Council particularly relevant in terms of those kind of things that are voted vis-a-vis, let's say, the General Assembly, or the relationship of the way the United Nations is structured? The Security Council is particularly important in terms of those peacekeeping or military activity in the name of the United Nations?
It is the Security Council which is mandated to look after the peace and security, global peace and security of the world, and therefore it is the Security Council which can mandate a peacekeeping operation.
Okay.
Unless the Security Council fails to do it, the General Assembly will have no role in it. But if the Security Council is not able to, for political reasons and because of vetoes, is not able to come to any consensus or is not able to pass a resolution, then it is possible for the General Assembly to consider those matters of war and violence somewhere, and they can unite for peace.
Uniting for peace, right.
They can unite for peace, and then they can also pass a resolution. But primarily, it is the function of the Security Council to consider all such matters with regard to global peace and security. And if they pass a resolution to deploy a United Nations peacekeeping operation, only then that operation can be deployed. And therefore, they are the ones who give it a mandate. And it is because it is mandated by the United Nations and the Security Council, these missions therefore have
a legitimacy.
And Yeah, that's right. Okay, so that's the legitimacy for the
It is
invasion.
interesting. You can have a uniting for peace or something by the General Assembly. That's interesting. You know that's something
But that's
that's
extremely rare.
I would think. Has
rare.
it happened at all? Or?
Okay, for example, let's say, I mean, I'll give you a very old example. When I can't recall the year, but when Soviet forces went into Hungary.
56?
Was it 56 then?
I would have thought.
Yeah, about
that.
that. Yeah,
56.
Yeah, 56. Yeah. And because at that time the Soviet Union had a veto,
right.
and they did veto any possibility of a resolution in the Security Council, and therefore the matter did go to the General Assembly.
Oh, really?
But otherwise, the matter doesn't go to the
Did we
General
act
Assembly.
on it? It seems to me in Hungary, I don't think we acted
nothing
very
happened. Yes.
adroitly in that particular instance.
Yes,
seems
of
to me,
course.
as I remember, yeah. But
Yes, neither in Hungary nor in Czechoslovakia in 63, I think, or sometime.
I wonder, maybe we're going to want to get to that because you've been at the UN in the peacekeeping. You understand that very well. It's a very important question where all the world now is considering Mr. McChrystal's thing. I know Mr. Obama is very concerned with what's to happen in Afghanistan, which is very much cheek by jowl with Pakistan. But back to Pakistan again, if we could. The military, Pakistan was formed in 1947, and I wonder if if you feel we in the United States or the wider world understand significantly enough what the focus of the military and political responsibility of the Pakistan leadership element is around the issue of Kashmir. That's something, and also a strategic sense that they have they have to keep a very careful eye on a major power to their west, India, and that's very much a part of the thinking of the political leadership of Pakistan. Particularly vexing to them is the problem of Kashmir. I wonder if it might be worth our addressing that for a moment or two, because it seems to me very much a part of the thinking of the people of Pakistan at a level of governmental or military responsibility. Kashmir.
Yes. As you say, it is, of course, a part of the thinking of the government and the military. But let me expand that a little bit. It is a part of thinking of every Pakistani.
Okay, thank you.
And it's important to know that because every Pakistani, not only thinks, believes that Kashmir is and should have been a part of Pakistan.
That's what the UN said in the 50s, didn't they?
No, they didn't say that.
No, but they said there
they
should
did
be a
say
mandate.
it. Yes,
right, there
exactly.
Should be a,
not the first time. The first time the UN said that was in 1948.
Oh, really?
And yes, that was the first resolution, Resolution 47 of the Security Council, under which a ceasefire between Pakistan and India took place in Kashmir because there was fighting going on. There was a war going on.
Yeah.
And
a terrible displacement of people, it seems to me, if I remember.
No, that was different. The displacement of people had nothing to do with the Kashmir issue.
Okay, right. Okay, yeah, it was after
the displacement of people was all over Pakistan and all over the northwestern parts of India.
Might have been the largest exchange of population in the history of the world or something.
Yes.
It was a major transformation.
Yes,
I mean Hindu and Muslim.
Muslims. And I mean, in today's words, perhaps we would have called it ethnic cleansing and things like that.
Yeah,
but, at that time, the international community and the laws, international laws on human rights, etc., were not shaped not shaped fully yet, and were not adhered to, and the international community was not so vigilant. The media was not, global media was not as active as it is today, so a lot of that information probably didn't even get to people. But of course, it was one of the worst, I would say, transmigrations that took place. And a lot of people were
very
killed.
Wrenching, very wrenching. But anyway,
there were serious crimes against humanity that took place, I would say, at that time.
There came to be a period where they had to have, and there's some, how is it going to be? Where's the line going to be drawn? And the people were, it was to be, there were 3 of the provinces, I think, that had some question when the boundaries were being drawn. And one of them was Kashmir.
Yes.
And
Well, let me come to
okay,
that.
yes,
Let me come to Kashmir.
It's worth,
so
it's
Kashmir
major
is,
in terms of the conscience of the Pakistan nation, and to the degree Pakistan is tied up. We have a lot of Pashtun brothers that are up over into Afghanistan, the very area that the United States and the world is very concerned with now.
Yes. Okay, quickly on Kashmir. The state of Kashmir was a majority Muslim state.
90%, I think.
In one part, yes. In the Kashmir part, 95% were Muslims. In the Jammu part, about 45 or 40-some% are Muslims, or were Muslims. In Ladakh, I think about 48 or 40-some again percent are Muslims. The remaining are Buddhists. In Jammu, the remaining are Hindus. But the largest population was in the Kashmir part, and where the 95% are Muslims. So when you took the overall, calculated this in totality, Muslims were about 90%, because in the Pakistani part of Kashmir now, which is called Azad Kashmir, or which means free Kashmir, 100% people are Muslims. And in a very large part, which is called the northern areas of Pakistan, again, about 95% people there too were Muslims, are Muslims even today. The remaining are, I think, Buddhist and maybe some others. So yes, it was a Muslim majority state, but it was ruled by a Hindu ruler. It was a princely state.
Yes,
okay,
right.
Maharaja Karan Singh was the ruler, and of course, India says that the Maharaja actually not sold.
No, acceded.
No, he acceded to India. He wrote an accession document, signed an accession document. Pakistan's stance is that was done under coercion, because the Maharaja had fled his state. He under a popular uprising, he had fled his state. He had gone to India. It was under coercive conditions that he signed that document. And before that, he had signed a document with Pakistan also, which was called the Standstill Treaty or something. I'm sorry, I can't recall the whole thing, but it's called Standstill something. He violated that and went to India and signed the other document. So, and Indian forces, because he signed that, Indian forces moved into Kashmir. But Pakistan not only believes, actually there is historical evidence, that Indian forces actually already moved into Kashmir a day before, the night before he actually signed the document. And therefore, it was a violation of international law. Anyhow, but this is I mean, we have our position in Pakistan, India have their position in India, and they lay claim based on the accession document. We lay our claim based on the principle on which India was divided into Pakistan and India.
And the UN had said there should be a plebiscite to decide
UN said,
by the people, which has never been observed.
No, which has never happened. And let me also say this: when the war was going on in Kashmir in 1948, it was India. It was India which went to the UN Security Council. Okay, on that, not Pakistan.
Interesting.
And having gone to the council and having accepted the resolutions of the council, which of course wanted a plebiscite to be held in Kashmir, that plebiscite has never been held, and India, after some time, not immediately, of course, immediately they did accept that they will do it, but it never happened. And now, of course, they claim that those resolutions are not valid anymore, and so on. So.
But that's I guess maybe the pattern or the takeaway from that is that there's strong feelings in terms of the people of Pakistan vis-a-vis India, that we should be aware of how much that influences the consciousness of the Pakistan nation.
And the Indian leadership also.
And the Indian leadership
India is a much bigger country, of course.
Yes,
and I would say that perhaps in people who live in eastern India and people who live in southern India may not have the same kind of acute feelings for Kashmir as the people who live in northwestern India might have. Because I think in northwestern India, again, a lot of people, not just the government, not just the political leadership, not just the military, believe that they have a stance on Kashmir. Other people who live in these regions probably have a similar feeling for the Jammu and Kashmir region.
Yeah.
As people in Pakistan do.
You
they have been fed on that. They've
Yeah.
been fed on that for a long time. People in
Right.
Pakistan have been fed on that
You've
for a
had
long
three
time.
wars, major wars with India, over the thing, and Kashmir seems to be often a bone of contention that gives this sense of distrust between the two countries.
Indeed, but the third war and the last real war that was in 1971 was not on Kashmir.
No,
it
that
was in East Pakistan.
Yeah, Bangladesh.
Bangladesh. But the other two was 1948 and 1965. Of course, Kashmir was the main reason for why we had those wars, and the Kargil, sort of
up in the north.
skirmish, I would say,
Yeah,
was also in Kashmir. But you're right, absolutely. When you
Okay,
say
and that's part, and particularly part of the military in terms of that. And you've been part of the military of Pakistan. That's it. And then also, I'm wondering if you could share within those military circles or within the leadership. You were chief of staff to Mr. Musharraf. That's a very important position that you held, and so forth. The feeling of the military there, as far as the ties and the relationship with with Waziristan or with Afghanistan. How important is that? How is it seen in broad general geostrategic terms and that sort of thing? Afghanistan, which is so much in the consciousness of the whole world, including President Obama, as you and I speak now.
Yes. Okay, looking from a Pakistani perspective.
Yes.
As we were already talking, because of Kashmir, Pakistan and India have had a confrontational relationship.
Exactly.
More often than they've had a normal relationship.
Right. Okay.
They continue to have a confrontational relationship. India is once again not ready to enter into negotiations or talks with Pakistan, comprehensive talks, because of there's a reason, because of the last blast that took place in Bombay, in Mumbai in November. But so Pakistan has a confrontational relationship on its eastern frontier, that is India.
Yeah, exactly.
Therefore, Pakistan cannot afford to have an unstable state on the western frontier also, that is Afghanistan. And it also obviously needs to or must have friendly relations with a state to its west, which is Afghanistan and Iran. Those are the two countries
right around both,
to its west. So Pakistan has a very serious strategic interest in establishment of peace and calm and security and normalcy in Afghanistan. If Afghanistan is unstable, it affects Pakistan very direly. And unfortunately, since 1979, that is the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan, Pakistan has had to suffer the consequences of what has gone on and what is going on.
Massive numbers of refugees came into
Pakistan. At one time,
yeah.
4 million refugees.
Right.
Okay.
They came in mostly to the northwest, through that area.
Yeah, through various passes, not just the Khyber, but through various passes
and
just across country.
Yeah, right.
4 million people. But anyhow, they are not 4 million now, but they are still, I think, about 2 million who are still in Pakistan.
It's still in Pakistan, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So Pakistan has had to suffer the consequences. And you might recall when Secretary of State Hillary Clinton was talking to the House committee, she had said, I think it's in April, she had, I think, very categorically said what role U.S. had played in the situation that we today face in Afghanistan, because it was U.S. which was then supporting the Mujahideen in Afghanistan in the 80s.
These are some terms we should get straight. Mujahideen is a freedom fighter.
Yes.
And they were freedom fighters, and we've talked to you, I think, you addressed us. The film Charlie Wilson's War shows sort of what the situation was. And maybe we could back up a little bit, because you were at War College, you would study strategic thinking. So the thinking, the geostrategic thinking of the world, George Kennan, containment, the clash was between the West and the Soviet Union, the heartland, land power, sea power, that kind of thing. And the invasion of Afghanistan was seen very, very within that dialectic of the Russians. They had not yet imploded as they were to do in 1989. But we finally got support for the Mujahideen who were fighting the Russian occupation of Afghanistan, and got them some weapons that were able to shoot down the helicopters they had been able to fire
Stinger
at
missiles.
random. They got the Stinger missiles and that kind of thing, and they fought against the Soviet, and we were on their side to do that. They were Mujahideen fighting for change because they were fighting our major strategic enemy, the Soviet Union.
Yes, Harold, but not just then.
Okay.
Even when the Soviets withdrew in 1989,
yes,
they withdrew from Afghanistan.
That's right, yeah.
And that was just before, like you say, the state imploded. Even after that, although U.S. Intervention in the region was not as active as before, yet when the Taliban phenomenon arose in Afghanistan, the U.S. was still on our side, on the Taliban and on the Pakistani side, because Pakistani state was one of the 3 states only which actually recognized the Taliban government in Afghanistan when the Taliban went and occupied Kabul and established a government in Kabul.
This is very important to understand. The Taliban. We get in the news now. We have Taliban. We have Al Qaeda. We have Al Qaeda. It seems to me is Arab or people that are from outside, including Mr. Osama bin Laden, and so forth. But the Taliban, is the Taliban correctly? They were part of the Mujahideen fighters against the Soviet Union. They were conflated together, that they were freedom fighters against the Soviet Union. We were giving them major support in order to fight that fight, and so they were our ally in a very real sense. And then there was the Taliban. Is the Taliban conflated with the Pashtun, which is a major nation that exists, subnation, 40 million people that goes across the whole border? Who are the Taliban, and who are the Al Qaeda elements within Afghanistan, let's say? Does it lap over into Pakistan? How important it is? And then maybe we could try and weave that in with the recommendations that have been made by General McChrystal, Sidney McChrystal, as to the American effort that has been brought more recently to Afghanistan. And maybe you could bring some of that together for us in a way that we could understand. Taliban, Al Qaeda, and the McChrystal report and the study, strategic consideration that Mr. Obama, I think, is pondering over very carefully as you and I speak. What's the attitude of the United States to be in that very volatile part of the world?
Okay.
A number of interrelated items.
First of all, Taliban are not and were not Al Qaeda.
No, I understand.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. No,
Taliban were a local Afghan phenomenon. All right. Al Qaeda is the organization that was created by Osama bin Laden, mostly with Arab volunteers. Taliban came in contact with Al Qaeda only when Osama bin Laden flew from Sudan and went to Afghanistan in 1996 or so.
I think it was around that.
Yeah, around 96 or 97 maybe. 96 perhaps. So when he went there. And by the way, at that time the world was not in any way alarmed about the Osama bin Laden or Al Qaeda.
There was a period when we were thinking of them as our allies in the fight against the Soviets.
Yes, I mean that was before that. That was before that.
No, but
Osama bin Laden was one of
our freedom fighters.
Yes, one of your freedom fighters, and he was trained by the U.S. and he was supported by the U.S. Anyhow, but that's I mean. Of course.
Yeah, things move with time.
Things move with time. Policies change with time. People change with time.
But it's what we're trying to understand, right?
Exactly. So the Taliban came in contact with Al-Qaeda only when Osama bin Laden went there, and yet Taliban did not become Al-Qaeda, nor did Al-Qaeda become Taliban. However, when Osama was there and the Taliban government was there in Afghanistan, Osama bin Laden was helping them with money, but most of the money that he was giving them was for, as much as I know, was for developmental projects in Afghanistan.
Schools and madrasas and stuff?
I don't know if schools, but perhaps making roads and bridges and things like that.
Well, that's something Mr. McChrystal is saying we ought to be doing. It's called nation building, in one sense, if you understand what I'm saying.
Yes, yes. I mean, nation building has more than just infrastructure. Nation building also
Teachers
relates to, exactly.
And clinics and things,
Yes, and government functionaries, and police, and military.
And that's the thing at the end of the Charlie Wilson.
The whole security sector needs to be developed.
Yeah, you've seen Charlie Wilson's War. It's
Yes.
a major film. Everyone ought to see it, the way the Congress of the United States works and so forth. And Charlie Wilson, he was on television last night. Say his position is we ought to get out. That's his position he takes now. He's still, I don't know if he's still a congressman, but he said, we won the fight against the Soviets, and then we messed up the thing because we should have built a school or two, and they couldn't get any support from the American people. They'd put billions in for weapons. They got into the hands, ended up in the hands of Mujahideen, but we couldn't follow up with trying to help that country develop infrastructure, schools, and progress, and so forth. And he said we messed up the thing, and it's true, we just left. And we
yes,
didn't
but
let's
come
we
to
could
now.
have made a major change at
I
that
agree
point
with you
if we
entirely.
if we were enlightened,
If the U.S. had not left at that time, and if the U.S. had been willing to invest then in the development of that country, perhaps there would have been no Taliban, and perhaps the situation today, the situation of the whole world would have been different. Certainly better, I think. But let me quickly, but let me quickly say a word on how the situation. I mean, that was then. When we talk of Charlie Wilson's War, that was the past. Let's look at the future quickly. There's one thing that we must understand. You said, Pashtun and all that.
Well, there's 43 million, and they overlap that whole
43
area.
million on both sides.
Some people conflate that with Taliban. Am I incorrect in that?
No, that's not right.
Okay. It's important to get
majority
straight.
Of the
and why
Taliban.
do the Taliban have such an attitude toward women?
Yeah, let me say that.
That's a major thing in the consciousness of the Western
Let me
world.
quickly address these things. First of all, majority of the Taliban are Pashtun. Majority, but not all. Okay. There are some Taliban who you will find in northern Afghanistan also who are not Pashtun, who may be Hazaras, or who may be Hazaras in the center actually, who may be Tajiks or
Kyrgyzstan or something?
No, they would be probably Tajiks and Uzbeks.
Yes,
a lot of Tajiks and Uzbeks.
Right.
But they are not the majority are Pashtun. But that does not mean that every Pashtun is a Taliban. No, he's not. All right? Okay. Why are, those should not be conflated.
Right.
Why are they against women? Okay. It is unfortunate that the Taliban perpetrated such policies against women that brought them a bad name, and that actually destroyed their image. Even some of the good things that they did in Afghanistan would not be recognized. Unfortunately, Taliban are, I would say, rather primitive people.
It's a cultural thing.
It's a cultural thing, and the tribal areas of Pakistan and Afghanistan, almost all of Afghanistan, south of the Hindu Kush, where the Pashtuns live, they are very poor people. They are ignorant people. Most of them are uneducated. They still, I think I was saying it the other day also somewhere, that they still live in maybe the 16th century, or if I were to give them some leeway, maybe 18th century only. I mean, in their understanding and thinking. So you have to understand it like that. So their policies about women were wrong. And let me tell you, when Pakistan recognized their government, one of the reasons was that Pakistan thought that they could perhaps have some influence on Taliban.
Yes, right.
And make them change some of their policies.
Right. I think
mean,
Mr.
they said,
McChrystal's thinking that way.
They said women should not go to school.
Yeah, what kind of nonsense
All right?
is that? Yeah.
And let me tell you something. They said women will not go to school, and women will not be doctors, and women will not go to work anywhere.
Yeah, but that's not Islam.
No, it has nothing to do with it.
People conflate it with Islam, and they will try to say that's what Islam is trying to do, take it writ large. And one of the things I'm talking about, you got Al-Qaeda, you've got funding, and then there is among 1.4 billion Muslims in the world, that's a major 1/4 of the world population, there is animus among large segments of that, if I may, against the Western influence that is represented by the Western legitimate power, so forth. There is a strong animus among a lot of people against the neo-colonial attitude, Iraq, other kinds of things that we've done, and there's strong support of that, so that there would be support from some of the Islamic quarters of the world for the people who are giving the United States grief, as it were, because they see the people who are in link with us, that we are a major problem in terms of the world. So the Mr. Huntington's clash of civilizations and so forth does have some basis in reality, that there is a large segment of humanity that they're not united, Islam, but they're a major force, and there's a great deal of animus directed at the so-called neo-colonial attitude of the United States of America, and they're very much against occupation, and we begin to look like an occupier, like the Soviet Union, bringing values that are not in keeping with Islam, and so that's part of the overall context, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, Harold, but before we talk of that animus, I just want to say something about Taliban.
Okay, please.
At the time when Taliban were ruling Afghanistan,
yes,
that is before 9/11, of course,
yes, right.
and Pakistan had recognized their government. They said women will not go to school, women will not go out, they'll not go to work.
Okay, yeah.
It was Pakistani people who, I mean, those who had contact with Taliban.
Yes.
It was Pakistan which told them, okay, if they will not go to work, how will your women be treated in the hospital when they fall sick? Would you like a man to treat your women? Then?
Yeah. And you had to deal with
that. And then they said, we had to deal with them.
You had to deal with that consciousness.
Exactly.
And the same problem we would have.
And then they allowed women doctors and women nurses only to go to the hospital. All I'm trying to say is that Pakistan was trying to engage the Taliban in order to, in the hope that we will be able to moderate their attitude somewhat.
Yeah.
Anyhow,
you got to be in communication with them if you're going to.
But then 9/11 and post 9/11 things have things changed. On that animus that you speak of among the Muslim population,
writ large.
Yes, and that's true, of course, and there's a reason for that. And the reason is not Iraq, or reason is not Afghanistan. I think the reason is
modernity. No.
Sorry, no, not modernity, not at all. The reason is that a lot of Muslim people around the world think that the United States uses double standards when dealing with global problems.
I think there's no question we use double standards.
No, but I want to make a point. Where it's a question of Muslims and non-Muslims, particularly in the Middle East.
Okay, fine. Yeah.
So Middle East is perhaps the most important factor, the situation in the Middle East and the relationship between Israel and Palestinians.
That still is central,
is perhaps the most important issue that causes many Muslims to look at the United States as not their friend.
Well, yeah.
Right? And
the world
and not just that.
Yeah.
Let me explain that.
Okay,
and not just that.
Yeah.
But say people in Pakistan would perhaps not be influenced as much by that issue. They would be influenced more by the U.S.'s attitude on Kashmir.
Okay.
People of Pakistan feel that U.S., despite Pakistan having been a U.S. ally since 1950, and the U.S. has shown favor towards India and not played its role in the resolution of the Kashmir issue, and it has not played its role in resolving other contentious matters between India and Pakistan.
Yeah.
Pakistan
or other parts
now,
of the world, for that matter.
Yes, other parts. But I mean, because
that are cheek by jowl with the Muslim people. Yeah.
Yeah, but what
there's
I'm saying
an animus against Muslim or Islam by the Western powers. That
yes, it has nothing to do with modernity and
you don't
you
think,
know,
okay,
no, not at all. I don't think so.
Okay.
I mean, I think Muslims, unless they are living in a primitive world like the Taliban, otherwise Muslims in the rest of the world where they are educated, they want to be
Singapore.
modern. Yes.
Or look at Indonesia. Yeah, right.
Yeah, Indonesia, Singapore, Malaysia, Egypt, Pakistan, Turkey. I mean, what have you?
Well,
they have nothing against modernity. They want to be modern.
Yeah, okay.
And on education, sorry, you said, you know.
Well, education, and then if I may, we used to have, you think geostrategically, and we used to have George Kennan's article and that, and we used to have the Western or sea-based powers and so forth, England and that, had the heartland, and we had a thing with the Soviet Union. We had the communist ideology. We had a land-based Soviet Union that was the threat. That seems to have gone away in any way since 1989, and it seems to me that sense of the Western powers, which are walking the world in big league boots, led by the United States of America, neo-colonial. They got forces in 130 countries around the world, and they've got a sense of their own historical legitimacy and so forth. But they now have as an enemy, in order to have a dialectic against which you can get your military budgets up and so forth, Islam. And it partly comes out of the situation in Israel, because we are completely in support of Israel and what we're doing to the Palestinians, but other examples of that. And so the modern dialectic that we're fighting against becomes conflated with Islam in the minds of some people who are trying to manipulate the American or legitimate powers, as it were seen, in terms of the way the world is set up. The problem is Islam. Then they come and knock down our buildings. Do you understand what I'm saying? So is that more or less something that is in a large pattern way, the dialectic that Mr. Kennan might say would have to have containment against Islam or something? You know, do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I'm happy you're saying that, and I'm not saying that.
Well, yes. I think it's true.
Yeah.
And also that they do not have a system. We just had a meltdown of an economy. They have a system that's based on a historical way of and the whole world is set up where you have elites running things, and most of the people are not well served, the masses of the people. So we don't have, in justice terms, real democracy yet. We may need it. The future requires it. And the leading systems that we have that are running the world do not have a system adequate to what the future requires in terms of bringing our technological capability to serve all the people, rather than just leading elements within each of the political entities around the world. Our vision is not adequate to what the future requires, that we're asking the world to accept as historically legitimate. So there's a movement in the consciousness of the world that we need something new and liberating, and it's not being provided by the so-called neo-colonial American experiences, either economically or politically.
Okay, we're taking our discussion into a sort of a higher realm now.
Well, it's being considered now,
yes,
because all these things are conflated in Mr. Obama's mind.
No, but I want to. I do. I mean, you're right.
Okay.
I do want to say a word. You see, the world is still divided into
haves and have-nots, for one.
No, into states.
Okay, yeah.
All right, into nation states.
192 of them.
Westphalian arrangement of states.
Yes.
And nation states continue to look after and work for their own interests.
Yes.
Only.
Yeah, right.
All right.
That's realpolitik.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, and interests then obviously come into conflict with the interests of other states somewhere. Somewhere they may not be in conflict. Somewhere they may be similar, and somewhere they might come.
Particularly in a globalizing world.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So in a globalizing world, those interests do come into conflict, and therefore, when they come into conflict, people use all the resources that they have at their disposal, or resources of power,
yes,
including military power and economic power,
right,
and political clout,
yeah.
In order to serve their interests and make sure that it is their people who get the better out of a bargain than
somebody
else.
It's a zero-sum view of the world that's been characteristic of history.
The world is still working under that arrangement.
Under a zero-sum.
And that arrangement is not, doesn't appear to be changing very soon.
Well, it may be required.
It may be required, but
like a birth comes after 9 months of gestation,
Right.
So there's a big change in the air, and the current leadership calling themselves legitimate, like the Angevin regime in Europe, thought they were legitimate in 1789, but there were people who knew something new was coming and needed, and what's new and needed on a planetary scale by the leadership is not adequately able to deal with what the future requires now, so there's angst in the air. So you need an enemy to cause, and I'm afraid they scapegoat Islam.
Appears to be, that at this moment. And like I said, I'm happy you are saying that, and I didn't have to say that.
No. But I think a lot of the world would see that at a certain level, don't you?
Yeah, perhaps.
Yeah.
Perhaps a lot of the world
because
would see
they're
that.
defending the status quo, and the status quo is unable to bring the justice and widely dispersed capability to the mass of the people, rather than just a few who run everything in the various political countries, which has been the history of the world.
Yeah, but that exactly. But that happens not only within. That's the arrangement within states and even between states
and the international order
and between states. Yes.
Yeah. So we need something new. And people resent that at a deep level, and the leadership of the world is not providing an image, or the intellectuals are not providing.
We need something new, which is more.
That new order.
We need something new, and a new world order that is more fair, that is more equitable, and that is more principled. Unfortunately, the world in its international relationship is. We do have the international laws and all that. Yet, let me say, the world is neither fair nor principled.
Right, nor has it ever been.
Nor has it ever been,
Okay,
and nor is it now.
Yeah.
All right?
But
so,
we do have a new capability that has not been characteristic of history in terms of being able to provide for everybody in a way that we haven't been able to through the advancement of science and technology. That's new. And we also have weapons of destruction that are unprecedented in terms of the capability. If we to go still... You're going to go and take a weapon system so you can go steal the grain from somebody else for your own tribe. That kind of thing that's been going on for your own national interest. And that's the weapons, I believe, are species lethal. So we're very concerned about that.
Yes.
I believe they are. If you take in germ warfare, and we only got a couple minutes left and we're back to Pakistan in a certain sense. Pakistan is now a nuclear country. And it happened when they blew up the bomb, India, and then Pakistan did. What's the implications of that? A huge responsibility. A lot of people are concerned with that. They call it the Islamic bomb.
Yeah, so that's unfortunate.
You understand?
Yes,
maybe you could address it and set it straight.
Calling it the Islamic bomb.
No, I didn't. I said the world.
No, the world.
And the propagandistic.
Let me say, whoever called it the Islamic bomb, again, I think is showing a bias.
Okay.
Because you don't call the Indian nuclear capability the Hindu bomb.
No, because
you don't call.
They come in on our side. That's what I'm saying. They're ganging up or
but
scapegoating
Pakistan,
Muslims.
But Pakistan has been more an ally of the U.S. than India has ever been. India was in the Soviet bloc. All right, Pakistan was in the U.S. bloc. Pakistan had. Not recently, since 1950.
No, but more recently, Mr. Bush went and gave all kinds of go-ahead to the Indian development of atomic energy and that sort of thing, and it's not even-handed.
It's not even-handed,
and that's part of the reality of the people in Pakistan with responsibility.
Yeah, but I quickly want to, because you say we have only little time, and I quickly want to say something on Pakistan and India, because they're both nuclear-armed countries.
Yeah.
First of all, let me say that I think it is immature for anybody to think that weapons of mass destruction like nuclear weapons can be used by Pakistan or India against each other just because they have a confrontational atmosphere between the two countries for a long time. I think people and countries who have such weapons also have enough sense of responsibility, and they do understand the consequences of use of these weapons. People in Pakistan, those who are responsible for managing these weapons, they know very well what are the consequences of use of these weapons. So I think it is is unthinkable that somebody should think that, oh, there may be a nuclear holocaust that takes place just because there are weapons with India and Pakistan.
Do you remember
No.
Barbara Tuchman's Guns of August, never knowing that a thing takes place ununderstandable in rational terms?
Yeah, but
You're not talking about rationality when you're talking about a nuclear holocaust. You're talking about an irrational order.
yes, but we do believe that people who have their fingers on the triggers,
Yes.
more often than not, would be rational people and not irrational
Well,
people.
one would hope, wouldn't we? You know,
Isn't it?
because the weapons are so ungodly powerful now.
Yes, yes.
Uh-huh.
But I want to quickly come to a point. So that is the situation, that is the arrangement. So what needs to be done? What needs to be done, therefore, is...
Peacekeeping.
No, exactly.
Yes,
but
and building.
Peacekeeping,
That's what you've been doing.
Peacekeeping, but at a sort of a much larger and higher plane of relationship between India and Pakistan. That is what needs to be done.
Yes.
India and Pakistan need to normalize relations. That is what needs to be done.
Okay.
The gentleman that I was the chief of staff with, Pervez Musharraf, tried very hard
Yes.
to resolve issues between India and Pakistan, and including Kashmir issue.
Yeah, right.
But the problem is that you can clap only with both hands.
That's right.
All
Takes
right?
two to tango, we
Takes
say.
two to tango. That's
Yeah.
right, exactly.
Yeah. And
So-
that goes across the
So
board.
India and Pakistan need to start tangoing with each other. All right?
Doing a fandango, doing a real tango. Yeah, right. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
It's a major issue.
because
a
unless
major flashpoint
because
in the
let
world.
let me say something that may not be in many people's mind.
Yeah.
And that is, unless relations between India and Pakistan can normalize, you cannot have a stable South Asian region.
Right.
That includes Afghanistan.
Right,
by the way.
exactly.
All right?
Yeah, that's right.
Therefore,
that's what I'm saying, yeah.
therefore, Kashmir issue has to be understood in that context. And India-Pakistan relations cannot normalize unless the Kashmir issue is resolved.
Okay.
And
There doesn't
I mean,
seem
some
to be
might
any
think-
indication that they're interested in doing that. They got all kinds of hundreds of thousands of troops up in Srinagar and terrible violations.
yes,
And it continues, and
yes,
they're implacable.
and that's unfortunate,
seemingly,
yes.
on that issue. They're
Yeah.
afraid if Kashmir goes, so will Assam, and the Indian Union will break up, or something.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, those things, yes, because there's a historical perspective to
Yes.
that. India or the Indian subcontinent was never a one united
Right,
country,
right.
except under foreign rule,
Right.
under the British and the Mughals. And therefore, there is reason why this thing is in the sort of political psyche of people in that region, that, okay, the country might break up. But what I'm saying is that in today's world, where there is international law, where there is the sort of nation-state arrangement, where there's a global order, I don't think countries break up that easily. You know, the international community also plays a role in the stability,
right.
in the stability or the instability of a country.
Thank you. One of the problems is we run out of time. We need a lot of hours. Thank you for coming in. I really appreciate it. Your pleasure to have the perceptions of Dr. Anis Ahmed Bajwa, a retired general, major general in the Pakistan Army, peacekeeper, and talking about the issues that are so much on the world's mind.